Town Talk, the official podcast of Summerville, South Carolina, where we bring you the latest news and incredible guests here in Summerville. And today, I am super excited to have Jenna Lachenman with us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Of course. And Jenna is the owner of AZALEA Magazine. And how long have you owned the magazine?
It has been about a year and a half.
Yeah? Okay, how's it going? Are you still... So let's start from what brought you to the Summerville area and your background.
Sure.
And then we'll kind of lead up to the buying of AZALEA Magazine.
Yeah, of course. So my husband and I moved here, it was over 2 years ago now.
Okay.
We moved here from Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Oh, nice.
So we went from the mountains to the Lowcountry. But my son, my oldest son, is an attorney here in Charleston, and we wanted to be closer to him and his family. We have 2 grandbabies and 1 on the way.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
That's so exciting.
Thank you. We're very excited. And so we made the decision to come down here. And at the time, he was living on James Island, and my husband and I were looking all over Charleston. We looked at James Island. We looked at different places. And one day my son said, I think you and Dad would really love Summerville. I grew up in a small town. My husband grew up in a small town. Blue Ridge, as you may know, is a small town. It's the first small mountain town outside of Atlanta. And so we really gravitate towards, those kinds of areas.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's just go take a drive out there and check it out and see it. And the minute that we drove into downtown and we drove down Main Street, I said, oh, this is it. This is my town. And then we just got, very blessed. We found a beautiful home here, and we live in the historic district downtown. So, we love it. We absolutely love it.
Well, we're happy you're here.
Thank you.
So with that background, what got you into publishing and media?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because I really hadn't spent any time in publishing and media in particular. I had done creative work and marketing work for many publicly traded firms in the corporate world, including Rosetta Stone and Honeywell.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And other large firms. So I was very familiar with creative work, with marketing and advertising, but I hadn't owned my own publication. And to be honest, I just fell in love with AZALEA the minute that I saw it, very similarly to how I felt about the town, actually.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly where I was, but I was someplace downtown and I saw it. And I thought, oh, wow, this is a really beautiful publication. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe it was free, and I picked it up. And I just got curious about it. Yeah. I had owned a small business in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which was in a completely different industry. I owned a boutique spa, actually, in Blue Ridge. Okay. And I had done some advertising in a publication that ran in that area. I knew the owner quite well, and being in the creative field and in the marketing field, I would always do my own ads for my business. Yeah. And she seemed impressed by my work, and she was getting ready to retire, and she had called me and said, would you be interested in taking over my publication? I know you're an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, would you be interested in doing something like this? And I was intrigued, but I kind of wanted to know what a day in the life was like for doing something like this. And so I had reached out to Will, who is the prior owner and founder of AZALEA, he and his wife Dottie. And I said, I'd love to just have a cup of coffee with you and learn about a day in the life. I'm not, competing with you. Talking about another publication somewhere else and considering it. And he was so gracious, and I think we scheduled about 30 minutes of time to talk, and we ended up talking for like 2 hours.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was shortly after that, he kind of said, hey, we've been thinking about this. We have some other projects going on, and we've been thinking about it might be the right time to transition this. But, Will and Dottie Rizzo, by the way, Will and Dottie Rizzo care very much about our community, and they really wanted to make sure that it transitioned in a way that it would continue in the same vein and go to the right person. And, I'm super blessed that they thought that that was me. And so we worked it out, and it's been hitting the ground running since, to be honest. Just learning every aspect of the business beyond just the creative, but the whole world of publishing is a world in and of itself. So learning
really
all of that, and it's really been important to me to scale our digital presence. So that is something that I've really taken on now that I'm at the helm of Azalea.
Okay. So you talk about, obviously the physical copy of the AZALEA Magazine is what most people are familiar with. But you said you want to increase that digital side of it. What are some things that you guys have done since you've taken ownership to enhance the digital imprint that you guys have?
Yeah, first things first, you really have to get the basics right? So we've always, or at least for the past few years, there has always been a digital version of the magazine that is published. But we needed to do some work to kind of reinvigorate our website, to get that modernized, to reinvigorate our social platforms, which are very important.
Of course.
And I, coming from, what I would call more the corporate high-tech space, right? Working a lot in the world of software, SaaS software, and AI in my corporate life. I was very familiar with that. And I think when I first took over leadership of Azalea, I had a really strong bias towards digital. I had no intention on ever stopping the print publication. I'm the type of person who still loves to read a print book, or, I subscribe to magazines. I still like to sit down with a magazine with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. But I think I was a little biased in terms of the digital, the importance of digital. And I started to do some research around advertising, around serving niche markets and communities, and what is effective for small businesses in terms of their conversion and their marketing. And what I actually found is that print media is still the most trusted media, and particularly magazines, the popularity of them and the trust factor with the consumer and the reader has actually increased post-COVID, post-2020.
Really?
So you see a lot more engagement, and this is across all age groups too, by the way, which was another thing that really kind of surprised me, But there is increased engagement, levels of trust. And then from an advertising perspective, the conversion rates are much higher when you have what I would call a multi-channel or an omni-channel approach, where you have digital campaigns, but then you also have a print component, particularly if that print component is in a high level, well-branded luxury type of lifestyle magazine. Very high conversion rates in that area. So it was a good learning exercise for me, and one that I've been able to pass on to our advertisers.
That's amazing. So why do you think that is? Why do you think print is still or why it's gaining more trust versus digital and advertising as well? Why is it growing? What do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few things. I think number one, I know for myself, again, working in the tech space and being on my laptop a lot of the day, most days of the week, people do reach a point of digital fatigue. And I think a lot of small business owners or even large business owners have this idea that, well, we're just going to put our stuff out on social media. And that's great for brand visibility, but it's not as great for understanding, comprehension, and conversion, because people are just scrolling.
Yeah.
They're just scrolling,
mindlessly,
Chris. They're mindlessly scrolling. They're, what's the word for it? I think that the kids say the doom scrolling, you know. And I think that's a real phenomena, that kind of digital fatigue and that scrolling.
Kind of black out. It's kind of just like, it's just you find you're deeper inside a hole that it's like YouTube, right? You watch one video and then you just are 3 hours later watching something on how the earth was made,
Exactly. And you don't realize that you're not retaining that information. Because our ability to retain information is predicated on not just how the information is delivered to us, but where and when it's delivered to us. So if I'm sitting down in a quiet moment, flipping through a book or a magazine, and let's say I'm reading an interesting story or I'm looking at a beautiful picture, and then I might see a brand represented there, the retention factor for that, just speaking neurologically, is going to be much higher than if I'm just flipping through social media. And by no means am I saying social media is bad or even
of course not.
That it's ineffective. And we have social media channels that, we're growing.
Of course.
I definitely put importance on that. But again, I think when you look at what is effective, right? Because you're not just wanting to get your brand out there, you're wanting to convert, you're wanting to bring people to your brand.
Yeah.
And so that effectiveness, that's where I think print does still kind of dominate in terms of the consumer mind share.
Of course. And I think you bring up a really good point, and it's talking about, everyone talks about the death of printed media, right? And let's just say newspapers and magazines and all that fun stuff. But it's not.
Right.
It's transforming with the times, right? They're keeping that tactile physical copy, but enhancing their digital, or finding some things that are unique in their physical copy versus something that's unique on their digital platforms as well. It's the same thing as a public information officer, right? When I come into this role, my job is to get the information to every single community member out there.
Yeah.
What that means is we have a very awesome, diverse community.
Yes.
And so we have to find ways to reach everyone. And that means people who love physical copy and will only read from physical copy versus people who only read from digital copy. Because those two factors plus everything in between is real.
Yes.
And so it's finding that middle ground, right? And understanding your community, or from a marketing term, target market.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Well, and you hit the nail on the head in talking about community, because I think you're right. When you see some of the trends in print is definitely not dead, even at what I would call a macro level. But when you look at, for example, the magazine publishing space, it is the niche or the community magazines, the smaller publications, that are really having their moment right now. And I think it's because people are interested in what is going on in their community and the areas surrounding their community. They want to pick up things that are very relevant to them.
Of course.
And again, I would say that a lot of what is driving that is we're bombarded with so much information overload every day that is at the macro level, that when you can have something that really just speaks to you and to your community, or maybe to one of your interests, like I said, in the niche space, that's powerful.
It is, it is. And it's crazy to see how everything works from a magazine level and from just publishing, right?
Right.
But I want to talk about AZALEA Magazine a little bit.
Sure.
So what's a day-to-day like for, and what goes in? So folks are online on your platforms, but also reading your digital or your physical copies.
Yes.
What goes into making that happen? What's the team like? Give us a little rundown of the whole rundown.
I'm just chuckling a little bit because every issue really is a labor of love.
Yeah.
I mean, so much love and dedication and just wanting it to be beautiful and wanting it to represent our community goes into each and every issue on the part of myself. But then also I'm very fortunate to have a team of writers that are amazing and photographers who contribute to the magazine that are amazing. And we have, my director of sales is just so passionate and amazing about what she does and, how much she cares about this community and the businesses in our community. And it's just every issue feels like, I don't know, I hate to say a birthing.
Yeah.
But there's just so much love that goes into it and wanting to get it right. And then, once it's out, it's just a tremendous sense of pride.
Yep.
And it really is like your pride and joy once it's out in the market. And our community is so supportive. And I'll frequently have people approach me, whether I'm at Coastal Coffee Roasters or, wherever I am, or send me an email or reach out to me and say, hey, I really love this issue, or wow, that article was amazing, or,
I love that.
I love Azalea. I had a couple tell me just the other day that they've been reading Azalea for, I think they said it was 6 or 7 years, and that Azalea is the reason they moved to this area.
Wow.
They were visiting, they found the magazine, they became, subscribers, and they're like, and that's why we moved down here. We just wanted to be here. So it's powerful. Media is a powerful tool.
It is. And I think we are very fortunate to have such a great publication here in town, genuinely.
Thank you.
I think it brings out more, like we talk about many times in this conversation, is community.
Yes.
Because that's the base of it. That's Summerville.
Yeah.
Right. And so speaking of that, where do you guys publish and where do you guys have your magazines located? And if anyone listening or watching, how can they get access to the content that you guys push out?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, you can always go out to our website, which is theazalea.com.
Okay.
And from there, you can subscribe to the magazine. You can inquire about advertising. You can look at some of our features that we publish on the website. And then you can also access the digital version of each issue from our website as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And do you just serve the town of Summerville, or is the magazine located in areas in the Lowcountry as a whole?
It is throughout the Lowcountry.
It is.
So,
okay.
The mission statement of Azalea is really about doing or talking about the Lowcountry, but with the heart of it being in Summerville. Because when you think about it, Chris, Summerville really is the heart of the Lowcountry, I think. I mean, the way that we're located, the way that we're growing, it is the heart of the Lowcountry. So we do super serve Summerville in terms of our distribution, but we also distribute throughout the greater Lowcountry. So including, Charleston, Beaufort, what I refer to, maybe, I don't know if anybody else thinks of it this way, but I refer to it as the Summerville Metro. So like Ridgeville, even all the way down to Edisto. If we do a feature, for example, we like to do a travel or getaway feature, not in every issue, but in many issues we've done that. And if we do a feature on, say, Greenville, for example, we will distribute magazines of that issue out there as well.
That's amazing.
So sometimes our editorial will kind of guide where we distribute to. But we're really very focused on the Lowcountry and super serving the Summerville area.
I love that. And how often do you guys publish?
4 times a year
4 times,
with
so quarterly.
Azalea. Yes, it's a quarterly publication, or you could think of it as a seasonal publication. And then we're getting ready to release a sister publication to Azalea, which will be Azalea Homes.
Oh, nice.
That will focus on the home and design space. And it will probably be twice a year for that publication to start with, and then we'll see, we'll evaluate from there. But I think given the feedback that we're getting already on that one could become a 4 times a year publication
I could see that becoming
too.
a 4 times for sure. So on a typical publication, how big is the Azalea Magazine team? Is it a large team, or is it more of a family, smaller team?
It's a smaller team, I would say.
Nothing wrong with that.
Comparatively, I think there's a core team of us that really put the magazine together. I will bring on interns at various points in the year to do things like art or creative work or editing work, but it is a core team of people for each issue. And then, of course, I send it to a publisher. I'm sorry, a printer. I am the publisher, but I'm not, printing it out of my home. Yeah. Obviously, it goes to a commercial printer for printing.
Awesome. Now, there's so many good things that go into the media and publishing world, especially with Azalea Magazine. It's a very popular magazine. All I hear is great things about it, and here in the town. But what challenges do you face running a magazine like Azalea Magazine?
Oh, sure. I mean, many. I think, one of the biggest things, and I think this was a real learning point for me, again, coming from the tech and the software world, where, software certainly is a challenging space as well, but it's very malleable. It's very flexible, right?
Yeah.
When you are doing a print publication, you are working against hard deadlines.
Yeah.
It's either you've got to send it to the printer on such a date, or it's not going to release on such a date. And even after you send it, just the nature of printing, no commercial printer can say, well, we're going to have it done exactly at X time. It's always a little bit of a dynamic process, but it is important for you to hit those deadlines. So it's a very deadline-driven space, and that can be challenging. I think, honestly, I guess I would say it's really not a challenge, but again, we strive to put forward a true quality publication every time.
Yeah.
So the standards are very high. And so I definitely, as editor-in-chief, I really try to make sure that, it's beautiful, that we have bold design, that we have interesting, readable stories. We are the only, really, in the family of community magazines in the Lowcountry area, or if you will, smaller niche magazines in the Lowcountry space, we are the only editorial magazine, meaning our content is true editorial. It's not advertorial. In other words, it's not paid content.
Yeah.
When we do a story, it is in keeping with our editorial. So, and that editorial covers the Lowcountry lifestyle, whether that's food or art, culture, history, notable people and characters. We will highlight businesses, of course, but our editorial is always centered around an interesting story and high value content. And that is the way we keep the integrity of our brand, but then also create a very elevated platform for our advertisers. So when people pick up Azalea and they see that you're an advertiser, they know, wow, that business is really, associated with a high-level brand.
Yeah.
So I do want to maintain that, and that's always a balance that
you
need to walk.
Of course. And when it comes to, and Summerville has always got so many great things going on. There's
so many stories.
So many. How do you find them, though? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of easy, but
Yeah.
there's got to be, I mean, you guys push out a lot of content. So how does that process work?
That was one of the things that I don't want to say I worried about in the beginning, but I think with getting the first few issues under my belt, I felt like going into each one of them, I was in a little bit of a panic, like, oh my goodness, I don't know what we're going to talk about in this issue, or I don't know. You always have a theme or sort of a directional idea, but I found myself wondering, is the content going to come? But Chris, it just does.
Yeah.
We have such a thriving community, and we're very fortunate that we just have a lot of amazing people and things going on in our community. So the stories do come. I know that sounds kind of vague.
No, I get what you're saying.
They
I get what you're saying. And I bet you if anyone, any other folks who are listening or watching in the media and publishing, the realm that are in the Summerville area, they're probably like, dang, they're lucky. Because it's true. We have a ton, not only a lot of great local businesses and restaurants and you name it, great people behind them and great stories, but the history here is huge, and so is the culture, and so is the events that we have. They're so unique and so fun, and it really, you're right, it makes it super easy to get stories and to cover things because there's just so much going on.
There's so much for us to be proud of.
There is.
I think, not growing up here, you really realize that, wow, we are living in this epicenter of history and culture that is so rich and so well preserved. Unfortunately, there are many places in our country where, historical places and are not as well preserved.
Yeah.
So give you a little sneak peek.
Oh, yes. First.
Little sneak peek. But,
first take.
We have coming up in the fall issue that we're getting ready to release, we are doing a spotlight on a Gullah Geechee storyteller.
Amazing.
And she performs and tells stories at Boone Hall.
Really?
So we went out there to see her. Lovely, lovely person. But I mean, it's that kind of thing that we're just so fortunate to have that here in the Lowcountry, this living history. And that's definitely one thing that we enjoy writing about. And let's not forget the food. I mean, the food, is amazing.
Obviously, the food
is amazing. Last winter we did, and food is always something that resonates with our readers as well.
Always,
Last winter we did a charcuterie board on the cover of AZALEA. And it was so funny because I actually made that charcuterie board for my family and ended up just photographing it because I thought it looked great, and then it ended up being on the cover. So sometimes things like that happen.
That's so cool.
I mean, normally the cover's a bit more thought out, but in that case, that was a very dynamic process, and that issue just flew. I mean, we couldn't keep it on the shelves. But, we have a rich culture of a culinary culture here.
Yeah, we do.
We have so many interesting people here, writers, artists, people who are involved in the community, involved in nonprofit work here, business owners who are doing amazing things.
Yeah.
It really is inspiring to be in this community. So,
it is.
To be honest, I don't have trouble coming up with stories, but I'm always looking for them. So if somebody has a story, reach out to us.
Yes, and I will have that in the bio if you have a story that you would like to share. It's definitely send it their way. Speaking on that, when it comes to being a leader in this realm, what advice do you have for folks who are not only interested in becoming leaders in publishing and media, but who are folks who are looking to just get involved in that industry? And what are some tips that you would give them and some advice as they maybe are in the industry or about to enter the industry?
Yeah, it's interesting because in my throughout my career and throughout my corporate career, as that career has gone on, I've found myself in a position where I've been mentoring a lot of young women coming up in that space.
Yep.
And then when I started my entrepreneurial ventures years ago, and I've owned several businesses, but I started getting involved in entrepreneur circles too, and doing some mentoring in that space as well. So I think probably, my take on that, or my perspective and my advice, would be more general, so not just within the publishing space, although certainly I could share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. But I by no means consider myself an expert in that space. I haven't been in that space that long. However, I have had various leadership and ownership positions. And when I mentor people, or when I am working with someone in that capacity of coaching, some of the things I talk about are really trying to, first of all, hone in on what you love, what you're passionate about, what you feel drives you or motivates you. Very often when we feel stuck in whatever it is that we're doing, it's not because we lack the energy, it's because we lack the motivation. When you're truly motivated and passionate about something, the energy will come. You will learn what you need to learn, you will do what you need to do, and you will move forward. So gravitate towards the things that drive you, that speak to you and that you love. I think that's the first piece of advice that I would give.
Yeah.
And the second piece is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Because failure can have a lot of bad connotations around it. It can be a very strong word for some people. But failure is part of the success process. You cannot succeed without having failures. You're either going to take a risk and have some moments where you stumble a little bit and get up and move on, or you're not going to go forward and you're going to have regret. But there is no path where you go forward and everything is perfect, or everything works out just amazingly, and you never have any hiccups, or you never have any
it's not real.
Failure is part of growth. So I think especially for women, I have found, whether it's a female entrepreneur or a woman in the corporate space, sometimes I feel that we struggle with things like imposter syndrome, or feeling like we need to be perfect before we do something. But please understand that action is going to trump perfection every time. The more action you take, the more things you're going to learn, and the more that learning will become part of your process, and it will also help you to overcome fear. Taking action is a great way to overcome fear. So I guess those are the things that I would talk about.
I love that. And you're right. I think learning and the failure aspect of it is huge. And I mean, quite frankly, I have a very long time in my career left. I am nowhere close to my retirement. I'm in my 20s. But I was fortunate to be in a leadership role at a young age, or go into a leadership role at a young age before I came into this role. And quite frankly, I had a leadership coach during that time because of the trials and errors that happen just in leadership, not just the role of what I do as a communicator. That's stuff that just comes to me, writing and talking and production, right? That stuff just comes to me naturally. But leadership is something that there is that natural aspect to it. But at the same time, it's trial and error. And I learned things through my first year as a leader that I never thought, and I've said this to people I have conversations with, I never thought would be anything that I would have to learn, right? Or anything that would be a obstacle. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And if anyone's listening and watching, do you offer coaching? Do you know any resources for our folks, for our listeners and watchers to maybe find coaching in maybe leadership or just overall coaching as a whole?
Yeah, listen, I still to this day, and I'm not early in my career. We're not going to talk about age, Chris, on my side of the fence. But suffice to say, I'm not early in my career, and I still utilize coaching for myself.
Absolutely.
I have a great coach that I work with. I think anyone at any point in their career can benefit from coaching. I do some coaching with women. It's on a very selective basis because obviously my time,
you're
being
busy.
spread. But it is something that I really enjoy, and it's my way of, I guess you could say, giving back or paying forward in the things that I have gotten to enjoy. Such an amazing career and such an amazing life as a entrepreneur to date, and it's really important to me to give back. So I do that with some folks, but I think just seek out a coach. And don't be afraid to interview them. It's very important to find someone that you resonate with, that you're going to feel comfortable with. So, for example, the business coach I have right now, I talked to several people, including her, before I knew, okay, yeah, this is my coach.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to explore that area and do your due diligence, for sure.
I love that. That's fantastic. And I would end it there because that is such a great message. But I do have one more question that I am just personally curious about.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite story that you have done since you joined AZALEA Magazine? I've been saving that. I thought about that question today personally. I was like, I have to ask it.
That is tough.
I know.
That is tough because
all of them are your babies, right?
Well, it's that, and they're also different. So, I could think in terms of, my favorite stories so far in certain areas of our editorial, things that I've really enjoyed covering. I mean, first of all, homes and historic homes and even homes that aren't historic, but these beautiful homes that are popping up in some of the new development communities around us. The whole area of homes is a passion for me. My husband likes to joke that if it were up to me, we would move into a new house like every 2 or 3 years because I'm always house hunting. Like I'm always looking at homes, and I'm fascinated by historic homes. So when we cover a home or a really interesting home renovation like we covered in the summer issue with the beautiful night home on Sumter Avenue. I mean, what a gorgeous, and talk about a labor of love. I mean, that was an amazing story to cover.
I love that.
When we do our travel pieces, there are so many interesting places here in the Lowcountry. So we did a piece, I can't remember exactly what issue it was in, but last year we did a piece on Defusky Island.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a magical place.
It really is.
Really is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it's underdeveloped, and it just feels like this, you're going back in time a little bit, when you're on the island. So I really enjoyed that piece. I love the pieces on new ventures and businesses that are popping up. So I was just talking with a new bake shop here in Summerville, and really enjoyed interviewing her and learning about why she does what she does and how she started her shop. So that will also be covered in the fall issue.
I love that.
But yeah, I mean, it's really a great gig. It is.
I love that.
I have so much fun with it, and one of the things that is consistently said when I'm not always part of the interviews. Sometimes my writers are doing that on their own.
Yeah.
But I have been part of many of the interviews we've done. And I'm so impressed by when we talk to someone, they always say, and it's always unsolicited, but they will always say, the community is so amazing. The community has really come out and supported us. We are in such a supportive community. And I think just hearing that and getting to be a part of this community is my favorite.
I love that. I love that. Now, I said that was my last question, but I just came up with another question. I guess that's how my brain works. Have you guys thought about ever doing a podcast?
We have, Chris.
I figured you would have.
I don't want to give too much away, but now that I've kind of gotten some things about the core essentials of the business under my belt, you're going to see us doing a few things, and definitely we have thought about a podcast. So I would love the opportunity to pick your brain about that.
Always welcome to helping the community with podcasts. Like, I think we hear so many great things from our listeners and watchers, because it's just something that is a little bit more laid back. And from a municipality standpoint, it's a little, communication is just, it's a little scary sometimes, or it's a little confusing. Right. And my job is to not make it scary and not make it confusing. And so we have a ton of different things that we try, and as you know better than anyone, it's trial and error in media and marketing, right? Yes. There's things that I've tried and it just doesn't work, and there's things that just hit. Podcasts hit. Cruising with the Mayor, our new series that we do right after Town Council. Really, to honestly make what is talked about Town Council more digestible. Yes. And that was a hit. And I didn't know, but I tried it. And so I encourage it for sure, because I would be a listener. So I'm just saying.
Thank you. Yeah, no, trust me, I love podcasts. I'm a big devotee of, I've always got a podcast on when I'm taking my walk or I'm cooking or doing, whatever. But I have to admit that a lot of what I listen to in the podcast realm are true crime podcasts. I'm a little bit of a true crime podcast junkie.
95% of these folks are definitely listening to their crime podcast right after this one. Right. They're switching right over.
Yeah. It sounds odd to say that that's one of the ways I relax, listening to true crime podcasts. But
that genre in podcasts is just so popular, and it's a great way to reach your community and to bring more personality to your brand, right?
And it's a great way to tell a story.
Of course.
So I think the reason that we've seen podcasts really take off, and I know the reason I love them and the ones that I listen to, is the storytelling. And it's interesting because someone was asking me the other day, well, Jenna, what's the common thread throughout everything that you've done? You've done a lot of work in the high-tech space, and, you've owned other small businesses, and now you own Azalea, and what ties it all together for you? And I really had to stop and think about that for a minute, but the answer I came up with is storytelling. Yeah. I mean, whether it's been in the corporate world, in my sales and marketing roles, where I am crafting a message, or doing public speaking, or evangelizing a solution, that is storytelling, and certainly storytelling is a huge part of Azalea, right? Yeah. And, my love of stories and my love of storytelling is something that has been with me, throughout my whole life. As soon as I was able to read, I became like an avid reader. I was like definitely that little girl in the corner with a book. I read a lot, and I love stories, and I love storytelling. I love that. To have the privilege of, leading something like Azalea that's telling these great stories about a great community, it's really fun, and it really is a privilege.
I love that. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate not only just learning a little bit more about you, but talking about Azalea Magazine and the importance it has for our town, and then what the community can get involved in too, right?
Absolutely.
And when it comes to incorporating stories or you know, becoming subscribers and all that fun stuff. But Jenna, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.